Welcome to Wisco Dice. Hey, yo, folks. Today is June 27th, 2021, and this is episode 82 of the Wisco Dice Tabletop Gaming Podcast. On today's episode, we will cover our interview with the creators of the new Kickstarter game. It's going to be featured. It's going to be awesome. It's Distilled. From designers right here in Wisconsin. We're going to also talk about how to stay cool at the game table when everything goes wrong. In our hobby corner, we're going to catch up on our miniature painting and hobby projects that we've been working on. But first, let's meet our hosts and dive into the games that they have been playing. So, hey, folks, I am your host, the Conesy with the most. I am joined by the one, the only, the Stark, the raving, the mad one himself. Hey, Brian, what is going on, buddy?
Hey, man, it's going really good. I'm actually no longer a disembodied voice. We are here in the studio. Pretty exciting.
That is pretty exciting, man. So, Justin, what's going on, bud?
Hey, Ben. Hey, everybody. I'm doing great. Again, super cool to see everybody in person. Very excited.
By the way, that was the Meeples champion, if you smell what the Meeple is cooking. And we've got the Ghost Walker, the strange, the mythical, the misty one himself. What's going on, Matt?
Hey, everyone. It's so great to be in person. Doing really, really well today.
And we have a new voice for the podcast. She's been behind the scenes, keeping all of us unruly ones in order. We have the brave one. Hey, Suzanne, what's going on?
Hey, not much. Glad to be here with all of you recording my first podcast.
Yeah.
Woo!
Woo! Clap, 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 clap.
Hey.
Yay! Yep, so we have another member on the show. Suzanne's been behind the scenes helping us run all of our marketing, helping do some of the reviews of the blog articles, and just generally bouncing ideas off of me for about the last 7 or 8 months, I think. So it's great to have her on the show and being part of the team as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the games we've been playing, though. So I'm going to start this off with the game Nemesis. Now, this is a game that Suzanne and Justin have played with me in different game sessions, but we had a blast playing it. It's from the publisher Awaken Realms. It takes about 2 to 4 hours. I'm going to lean a little more to the 3 to 4 hours in actual playtime. There's a bit of setup and whatnot on top of that as well. Plays 1 to 5 players, which is pretty cool. Nice game. You can do solo. You can play with a larger group. Basically, in the game, you're going to wake up from cryosleep on the Nemesis spaceship, heading to what you think is Earth. Next to you is one of your shipmates. His chest has been exploded. You have no idea what's going on, nor can you recall exactly the layout of the ship. Your goal is to not only survive, but to accomplish some secret objective. At the start of the game, you'll have a couple of those secret objectives. You'll work as a semi-cooperative with the other players in the game. And as you play, various intruders, which are basically aliens, will appear on the board and attack you and do damage and potentially infect you and mean that your chest explodes at some point, or various other horrible things happens. And, you might just lock on to a corporate objective that means that you want to ensure that one of the other players doesn't survive as well. That's the whole semi-cooperative aspect. But during the game, you'll move around the game board and discover various rooms, and they will do things and give you extra abilities and actions, and you'll manage a set of cards that help drive what your actions can do and help you pay for the expenditures of what it costs to do those actions. And eventually, if you're fortunate, you'll either return home to Earth, alien-free, and with your objective accomplished, or you'll launch off an escape pod and have your objective accomplished, and maybe that means that player 3 didn't survive. I don't know. And yay, that's the game. Unfortunately, in my last play, which is our play that I played with you, Justin,
Yeah.
we unfortunately had the ship completely malfunction. We had there are so many rooms that can malfunction during the game, and we had too many malfunctions. We ran out of malfunction tokens, and at that point, you lose the game. The whole ship just fails and blows up while it was headed to deep outer space. It was kind of silly. And then on Suzanne, we played. What happened to you at the end of that game?
Oh, my scientist, I think I was, just kind of beat on the big alien and almost died, almost killed it, actually.
Yeah, didn't you get to the escape pod?
I got to the escape pod, but we couldn't launch it. There's not enough turns left.
Yeah, so close, and then, I just died horribly in that game. So
I went on for several rounds by myself.
Yep.
I don't need anyone else, I guess.
So you're saying Murphy's Law was in full effect on this day?
it was. So I will say this game, if you like the Alien franchise and you want a board game that captures that Alien feel, holy cow. Like, I love games with great narrative. This game just tells the story the whole time you play it. What did you guys think of it that you played it before?
It exactly captures the feel of an Alien movie. Really, really good story and theme. I think, even though we sort of had this anticlimactic ending where the ship just blew up because some spark triggered based on the guy we were playing with had done some sabotage, and we had nothing repaired, so the ship just blew up. But the whole story of how we got there, and him doing his sabotage, I think he was the engineer.
He was the mechanic.
The mechanic.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be repairing the ship, but all along had this secret objective to just sabotage. And I think one of us was supposed to die for that objective. The story that came out of that was awesome.
Yep, we were too busy backstabbing each other and not busy enough with trying to deal with keeping the ship flying. So it was hilarious.
I correct me if I'm wrong. I think we all ended up picking corporate objectives for that one. The one I picked was actually kind of okay because it was just like we had to research the aliens a certain amount for my objective, so it wasn't like directly antagonistic to anybody. But yeah, we all just decided to backstab each other right away and pick corporate objectives.
It was pretty backstabby, that game. Yep, and obviously it worked out. We all died. We got two of the three of us got our corporate objective fulfilled at least.
Well, I will say, and I've watched this played online, and I think I was here one of the nights you guys were playing it. And one of the things I noticed really quickly is it kind of reminded me in some respects of the way a pandemic board can just suddenly spiral out of control on you. Oh, yeah. And even though it's not that type of game, it had that kind of feel. Because it was like, I was like watching you guys and you were like, oh, everything seems okay. And the next minute it was like, it's very wrong. It's very wrong. And it just kind of very quickly spiraled. And you guys were like, ah.
I think we woke up the queen on turn 2.
Very early.
I might have been me actually somehow. And it's a good comparison to compare it to Pandemic, except that there is this background aspect of, it's not really. I might not want to cooperate with anyone to get my objective. So in the start of the game, it kind of feels like you should be cooperating, but we all just, like when we played, we just went our separate ways just to kind of explore the ship and find stuff. So any chance to cooperate was difficult because you're just spread across the ship. You're trying to find things. And I think to be successful, you probably do need to cooperate more in that Pandemic style. But then you're all spread out. Things go super wrong. And then you're also trying to sabotage each other. So it feels like Aliens, though.
There is a full actual co-op mode to the game where you take out the objectives. So, if you wanted maybe a slightly easier, more cooperative game, you could. But I like that total, do I trust these guys or not right off the bat? That's just right up my alley. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So that is Nemesis from Awaken Realms. So, Brian, I heard you were playing some games. What do you want to tell us about?
Yeah, actually got a few at the games days in this month. I guess I'm going to keep with the deep space cryo kind of theme. This game's actually called Cryo. I guess it's published by Z-Man Games. I played it the other day. Justin was in it. We played a 4-player game. It goes 2 to 4 players. It was actually Justin's copy, so you can probably fill in some of my gaps here because it was my first time playing. I estimated it'd probably take about 2 hours, like a 4-player game with experienced people. We were maybe a bit slower. I think Justin was the only one who had played it at that point. But the idea of this one, it's like a colony ship that something goes wrong and you end up crashing on this frozen planet, and everybody's kind of competing factions, so you're kind of going against each other, and it's a really cold planet. The idea is you're trying to kind of save your own colony members and get them into these underground caverns before it gets too cold as the sun is going down. So I guess the style of game, it's like a worker placement, but then I think you could also call it like an engine building kind of portion of it also. That was kind of the most interesting part of it to me. I've played quite a few worker placements, but the kind of the engine building aspect of it. So there's all the actions you're taking on the board. Most of them are like kind of collecting resources or taking actions to kind of move your people into the caverns, like scouting or discovering new areas in the caverns or gathering scavenge parts and stuff like that. But then you can also pull some of these actions back to your player board. And so you're placing these drones on the board as kind of your first actions. Then at some point when you run out of drones or whenever you want, you call them back to your kind of launch pad or whatever it calls it, your player board, and you can set up your other actions there. So you can kind of customize something that works out however you're planning to kind of win the game here. And that was really interesting to me. It was a little tricky coming into it the first time. It's like not real sure what was gonna, how you were gonna approach it strategy wise. So I just kind of went for what seemed to be the most efficient, and it was doing pretty good. There's also a little more customization. There's like cards you have a hand of, and then you can play them in like a few different ways. Some are vehicles just to transport your colony members to the caverns, and then you can also play them as like additional goals, like objectives for scoring more points at the end. And then some of them you play them and they'll be like an extra kind of action or like a boost to some of your actions throughout the game. And so that was pretty cool to have all the different ways to be able to play those cards, and you can like scrap them at different points and stuff, so you're not like locked in that way. But I don't know, it was a really fun game, kind of a little crunchy. And then I think my only critique was the ending was a little iffy.
Yeah.
Like there's kind of a countdown, but more or less like kind of a number of turns countdown that runs as like it's the sun setting.
Yep.
And then there's like a final, like the sun's down kind of token that comes out at the end, and the person who picks that one when it's out on the board, like that's just kind of the hard end of the game. I think, Ben, you made the comment, like a lot of games like that, usually when somebody ends it, everybody else gets like kind of one more round kind of thing. And I think this would really benefit from something like that. Like you feel a little more in control and competing, where it can be really beneficial. Like it was super beneficial. Justin actually won our game, and he was able to end it.
The one of the big ways that you're going to get points in cryo is by having area majority control over the caverns where you're trying to bring your crew members to get them off the sort of the icy surface. So you're bringing your crew members and their pods down to these caverns, and you get points for having majority in a cavern. So basically, just the way the timing worked out, I had the opportunity to take this sort of end the game tile at the end of my turn, and I had majorities in like caverns that were good for me, so it made sense for me to like end the game at that point, which like Brian said, I think and I may have to go back just to check the rules to make sure we actually played that right, but I read it a couple times. I'm pretty sure that's the way that it works, but it does feel a little anticlimactic that the person can just say, "Oh, the game's over now," because I have my people in the right place and have the majority. So,
well, another really good game out there that's like that has a very similar ending mechanic is Scythe. Like it's a super popular game, right? But all of a sudden, somebody's got their stars. The game's over, and you're like, "Oh, I just needed that one more turn," and not that necessarily I knew it was going to end the game, but just that one more turn to do stuff. And if you're playing like in a 6-player game of Scythe, you're like, sorry.
Yep.
I just needed one more turn, man. I would have
the person that was on the far side of the table, I couldn't really see 100% what they were doing because they're way away from me and not doing anything that impacts my area of the board. Just ended the game. Great, And I've had games where I played that, and at the end of it, everybody's like, except for the winner.
Yeah, I don't like to talk about Scythe. It's like my nemesis, man.
Brian, what did you think about the player interaction? There's a little bit of, it's kind of like take that a little bit to it.
A little bit. Yeah, when you guys were just talking about like watching other players, and like everybody's kind of on a different track doing their own thing, but there's a little bit of like even forced player action to a extent. Like you're all competing, like definitely the game is set up that way. You're not like cooperative at all really, but it actually makes you sabotage other people's whatever colony members in cryo sleep still. Like you have to destroy some of them throughout the game, so it's kind of forced that way. And I think you had played it like 2 players a few other times, but 4 players, like the board game was a little more competitive, I think, as far as the action spots that were available. And then everybody's kind of on different tracks doing their own thing, so that's kind of like I didn't really have a good idea of until we all kind of pointed out like, hey, Justin would be pretty good to like end it at one point. Like I didn't really know where everybody else was as far as their strategies, but you're just kind of working on your own strategy, kind of churning it out. So it's kind of hard to keep track of everybody else. And yeah, it would have felt really good just to have that one kind of last ditch effort, one more turn after the game ended. So.
Yep.
And I will say this about the game that you guys got to play. We had the good fortune of having our new show sponsor actually over
That's right.
to play board games with us on game night, and that is BK or Brian from Misty Mountain Games. So Misty Mountain Games here in Madison, Wisconsin. If you are in the Madison area and are looking for a great place to pick up games, I can't say enough about the product that's on the shelves. He has a great selection of board games on the shelf all the time, available. They're open 7 days a week. If I'm looking for a game that's been really hard to get and everybody's sold out of it, if I go to Misty Mountain Games, there's good odds that BK has a copy of that game sitting on the shelf. And that's awesome. So if like I said, if you're in the Madison area or if you're even remote, you can check them out. I think you can order online from their website and they'll ship to you. I don't know how well that works. So But if you're uncertain, give them a call. If you see something that you think's in stock or you want to make sure that you can get it, just shop there. It's great. Always support your friendly local game store. But it was awesome seeing BK here and actually playing games, with him. I didn't get the chance to play with him, but he got to play Cryo with you guys, and I think he had a great time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he definitely enjoyed it, I think, and hopefully we'll see him back multiple times in the future.
That's the plan. So, Matt, what have you been playing lately?
One of the things I pulled out just recently, I was playing with the family, is a game that actually Conzi introduced me to. I want to say it was almost a decade ago, which is a game called Dominion, which is by Rio Grande Games. It lists the playtime about 30 minutes, which I'd say it's between 30 minutes and an hour. Just really depends on how quickly people play. It is a deck building game, so it's the thing I really like about deck building games is I think they're really easy to teach. Everybody kind of starts on equal footing. It's not like you run into some of the things with things like Settlers of Catan, where there's a lot of different mechanics, and if you place in the wrong place, you're just kind of screwed. Deck building games, I think, have a lot more flexibility with how you build them. And so for people that don't really understand what I mean by a deck building game, is basically there are cards you can buy. There are all sorts of mechanics where the ultimate game goal is you want to get the most victory points. And the way you get victory points is through purchasing certain things like duchies and provinces and things like that. But the mechanics are really, there are also cards on the table that you can buy that give you things like actions and extra buying power and the ability to buy, better treasure, so you can get from copper to silver to gold, and build your deck so that you keep adding cards or removing cards in a way that you basically make it more fluid so that you can go through more cards in a turn and you can have more buying power and things like that. So you keep building your cards by buying stuff. But it was really super easy. It was kind of neat to watch my daughter, who's 14 years old, really get into the game. And, she seemed a little bit like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. But after about one or two times around, she was really into it. And by the end of the game, even though she didn't win, she just had a really good time because she had this kind of flow going in her deck that she could go through 2/3 of her deck in a single round. Which was always kind of interesting to watch her. She's like, I play this, and then I get 2 more actions, and then I get this, and I get more buying power, and she's just like flowing through cards like crazy, and she had a really good time. But I don't know, that was just kind of one of the things I've always liked about deck building games is it's, they're super easy to pick up, but there can be all these subtle strategies built in. So I like to think they're a little crunchier for the people that really love to come up with interesting combinations, but it's also super easy that you can just kind of get somebody engaged and moving forward on it. So
yeah, and there's so many expansions to Dominion now that you can just keep growing, and if you want a different experience, you're going to mix and match the different expansions together. It works so well. And we're talking about what is one of the original really modern deck building games. Like
That's
if
like
you
the grandfather of deck builders, really.
just
I mean,
about, yeah. If it's not the full blown grandpappy, it's pretty darn close to it. Like I remember, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago when I was first getting into board games, getting introduced to Dominion, and it would get out and on the table like on a regular basis. Of course, our collections of games weren't that big, but it was popular because it was fast, it was fun.
Yep.
It's still fun today, even though I don't get it to the table that often. But yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah.
Were you guys playing with expansions or just base game? Or
No, just the base game. And
Yep.
since this was my family's first time really playing through it, I kept it to the they have several like
The kind of
recommended
yeah.
decks. It was like, this is your first playthrough, you should probably play this.
yeah,
Because it does give you a nice mix of cards, and that's the nice thing I like about the Dominion game is they have like 4 or maybe 5 decks recommended, like for selections of cards that really play nicely together. But they also have this mechanic where they give you, it's like they call it the randomizer, which is basically a deck of basically one of each type of card, and you mix them up and just deal 10 out. That's the 10 you put on the table, and you just. It just kind of depends on what you pull as to what you get. But, I think it increases the replayability of the game quite a bit. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
that's one of the coolest aspects of Dominion, I think, because even in that base game, there's a bunch of combinations of cards you can play with just from what's in there.
Yeah,
A
absolutely.
unique experience each time you kind of randomize, like you said. Yeah.
So yeah, Dominion's a great game, and it's who is it from? It is
It's Rio Grande Games.
Yep. So Dominion's a great game, and it's from Rio Grande Games. So definitely check it out if you haven't played it before. Hey, Suzanne, we're finally going to get to you and let you talk for a little bit. What have you been playing lately?
Well, you have to circle around back to Justin. So, one of the games we recently backed with Kickstarter that Conzi backed was The Winter Queen, and that came on a lovely summer Wisconsin summer day. So we played that outside. It's 2-player. It took about 20 to 30 minutes, which was what the box said to play. Winter Queen is published by Crow D Games. So you can find it on their website, I think, too. I
Yeah, I think
believe
so.
when you looked, you can, even though it was a Kickstarter, you can still order it. It's a new abstract game for us, and abstract games are a family favorite here. For my daughter, when she was very young, we would play Blackus on repeat, which was great, and we really enjoy Azul. We've moved on to that, and so having another abstract game to add to our collection was fun. Ben recently did post a review on the Wisco Dice website to check out a little bit more thorough of his thoughts with it. So in this game, basically, the Winter Queen is holding a special competition for her court sorcerers, and you're going to play as one of these sorcerers, creating ornaments for her and trying to please her. The rules for this game I thought needed a little bit beefing up. There were a few areas where I was missing what they were actually their intention was. Ben caught on a little bit quicker than I did to that portion of it. Usually, if you've listened to me complain about rules, it's because they have too many words in the rules and they should simplify it. Even with that, the teach is fairly quick as well as the playtime. The components have a really nice feel. They were heavy enough to be able to play outside, not have to worry about them blowing away. It would be great if they had an expansion at some point for it. But even as a standalone, just as the base game, it was very nice. It was not my favorite, but I'm definitely looking forward to playing it again and playing it with more at a higher player count too.
Yeah, I really like that
So.
game. It was a lot of fun, and yes, the crystals that come in the game are actually relatively large. They're, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so instead of the tiny little crystals that you would imagine. Like I saw the Kickstarter, I'm like, oh, they're gonna be those little tiny crystals and whatnot, and you'll be losing those things. No, they're like big chunky pieces of plastic, and they look really cool, and the game is very pretty. I really enjoyed it. I think the rules thing might have been a little bit contributed to my teach because it was a first teach, and I ended up reading the rules and doing the teach. I think that's a struggle point sometimes. Oftentimes when Suzanne and I learn games, oftentimes I hand Suzanne the rule book, and she sits there with the game, and I go watch a YouTube video to learn how to play it while she's playing with the components and reading the rules. And usually those games, she's got, she'll tell me, she's got a very good grasp of how the game works and how to play the game. So this one was a kind of the opposite flow, where I took the rule book and just like, here's how you play the game. So probably not the best teach either when it comes to the rules.
I may have snuck in a read of the rules when you stepped in the house for a minute. So
Ben, I don't know what you mean. I've never run into a scenario where you just weren't perfect on the rules.
Oh, that happens on a quasi-regular basis. Yet somehow people keep looking to me to be like the rules guy. I don't know. All right. So anyways, that is Winter Queen from Crowd D Games. So definitely check it out. Definitely if you're looking for an abstract family game that plays with a relatively light rule set, but has a lot of complexity to it, it's definitely worth checking out. Anyways, let's dive into our hobby corner, and I'm going to go ahead.
Do you
No
want to
game
talk
for
to
Justin.
Huh, Justin? Oh, did I skip? Whoops.
Yes.
Skipping
Totally
the
skipped.
Meeples
and I even
champion.
reminded you.
The Meeples
I
champion
thought-
relegated to the
we
back.
need to hear about this great game
Just like Ben reading
that we
rules.
played the other night.
So, Justin, what have you been playing?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a game called Archmage or Archmage. I think I'm going to say Archmage. This is a game that came out in 2018 from Starling Games. It's about 60 to 120 minutes. I think that's pretty accurate, depending, how slow you are at playing. But it can be played pretty quickly, I think. So 120 minutes if you know the game, I think that's the max you'd be hitting. It plays from 1 to 4 players. It is a very thematic area control game where each player is a mage who is attempting to gather followers, learn spells, increase their spell knowledge, and gain dominion over the land by taking it over with their followers. So the game is a modular board of hexagonal tiles, which represent the wilderness and the enclaves of the ancient mythic races like elves and dwarves and demons. There's 6 in total, and there's also towns and camps where you can gather more followers. During the game, you're going to be exploring the board, these hexes, and taking over area with your followers. The main part of the game is this area control, where I'm expanding my control by placing out followers as my mage travels around the land. While I'm doing that, I'm gaining the magical relics from these areas of the land that power up spells in these 6 spheres of magic. You use your followers as well to train apprentices in these 6 magical spheres, which will basically then give you spells to use on your turn. The spells give a variety of different effects, like letting you move further on your turn, give you bonuses for attacking other players, even effects like removing an entire chunk of land, a tile off the board, and relocating it somewhere else. As you expand your control and gain more resources, you're trying to train up apprentices and get more and more powerful spells, from the kind of basic level to advanced and eventually master level spells, which have really powerful effects. Ultimately attempting to be basically the most powerful mage with the strongest spells and controlling majorities in each of the kind of wilderness lands out on the board. The components for this game, really well designed. They have these really slick player boards with sort of this overlapping spheres of different color for these 6 spheres of magic. The game clock is handled by these colored planet tokens on the top of your player board, which you sort of progress towards a center space, and at the end of the game is triggered when the planets have aligned in the grand conjunction, and at that point you basically look at who has the strongest area control out on the board and who has the best spells, and that player is the archmage and wins the game. It's a really high player interaction game, so this is area control, and your control over an area can change really, really quickly. So I can move around the board and leave followers behind me, but then all it takes is for another player to move into that space, spend a movement point. You essentially get 5 movement points on your turn. They can come into my space, kill my guy, and place theirs there instead. So there's definitely this push and pull to take over land, and it's easy for control to change hands really quickly. again, high play interaction. There's a little bit of take that mechanics. I can cast spells that can hurt my opponents or potentially protect my guys and my land that I have. I think if I had some criticisms, it would be nice if the game had some other ways to earn points at the end. So at the end of the game, you basically get points for the spells that you've learned and then majorities that you control on the land, and that's it. So there's a lot that goes on, moving around the land, attacking other players, learning spells, for the game to kind of boil down into, well, if you've got a master level spell, that's 4 points, and if you control a majority of a particular land type, say forests, that's 2 points because you have the majority. So I'd like to see maybe some other areas to get points, because the gameplay, I think, is really fun. It's engaging. If you enjoy the kind of play interaction, taking over people's stuff, protecting your area or customizing what you can do with these different kinds of spells, I think it's a really fun game. And despite those minor flaws, very fun to play. I did play this with Ben and Suzanne at 4 players. What did you guys think about it?
I need to pause right here and explain something. At this point in our discussion, we had misinterpreted the end scoring rules for Archmage. Based on that, the actual rules are that at the final turn, you score points for all of your areas you control before proceeding to the next player on the final turn of the game. That would make a dramatic difference in how in-game scoring works, and we definitely played it wrong, and we're very excited to get this game back to the table and play it the correct way and see how much more fun and enjoyment we get out of this game. Back to the episode.
Well, it was a very enjoyable game to play. I think I lost pretty badly, if I remember in there. Though, oh, sorry, that was Ben who lost very badly. Ben had gone first, and he had pointed out towards the end that if you are at the beginning, if you're first or second, you're kind of have a tough time gaining and maintaining your area control.
Yep.
So having this be my first playthrough, I hadn't realized that. And so, I lost a lot of area and probably should have been focusing more on my spells. But it was definitely enjoyable, and you didn't feel bad when someone was taking over your land. It's like, all right, they took it over. I'll get my guys and take over their land later.
Oh, yeah, we had a very aggressive game, I think, at 4 players. And it was never a point. Like, there was a point where it was like, oh, hey, Justin looks like he's doing really strong on the map. Everybody ganged up and beat on Justin for a while.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it looked like Justin wasn't going to be able to do anything to be able to come back. But then a couple turns later, you were right back in it and being competitive and contesting things. So it was that part of the game was really well designed and worked, I thought, amazingly well, and it helps make the game really fun and worth playing. The end game, as has been noted, when those planets align on your player board, if you're first player, well, that means everyone else has a turn to take territories. And so whoever's like in last place, particularly, depending on where they're poised, but moving around the map isn't so hard. And if you needed like that extra that one extra territory to get majority so that you score the points for it, it's much easier for you if you're going later in the round. So if you're the first or second player, it almost makes sense from a strategy perspective to maybe focus a little more on getting spells. Of course, we didn't know that being the first play through.
Yep.
So yeah, I went first, and guess what? I had the least amount of points because, hey, I had all of this territory going into the final at the end of my turn at the end of the game, and by the time it came back and we got to scoring, I had lost majority. I had like majority in 3 different types of things on the board, whatever they were, and I had lost majority in every single one by the time we got to end game scoring. But the rest of the game mechanically worked really well. It'd be almost interesting if they had just a different way to trigger the end game instead of having the planets align, and then everybody gets the same number of turns.
Yeah.
So are you thinking more? And I apologize, I can't think of the name of the game. I'm thinking of the one with you're going to know the game I'm talking about, where you do. It's an area control game, but it's in the fantasy setting with like you have like marauding elves and you control like you get stacks of creatures and then you throw them into decline.
Oh,
Small
Small
World.
Small World. So small. I'm thinking like mechanic like Small World, where you earn points every turn, as opposed to just at
Oh,
the end.
that would
or
work.
something
That's
like that.
interesting.
Because that was what
Yeah.
made Small World kind of interesting, is because you could be down for a little while, and then you throw your group into decline, and then you grab a better marauding army, and then you take over a bunch of space, and then you earn a bunch of points for say 3 or 4 turns. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if like a mechanic like that might make it better, because like you said, it does kind of suck when if you go first on the final turn, you're just watching everybody chip away at you for the whole rest of the thing,
Yeah.
unless you build a huge lead in certain areas. But
That would be a really cool way to change up the game. Justin highlighted it a little bit. If there was just some extra ways to score points,
Yeah.
like, hey, maybe being the first person to get a master spell, or the
Sure,
first person to get, say, 3 master spells, or something like that. Those kind of
Yep.
goal-based objectives, I think, would really change it up quite a bit and allow you to do something during the gameplay that's still something you want to do, but also gives you just a little more, hey, I have a little a little bit better way to get some points or something else out of it.
Yep. There is an expansion for Archmage, which I probably will pick up. I think that came out maybe 2019, and it almost, one of the big features of it actually is specifically an additional set of kind of objective goals that you can earn points for. So that may be the key here.
Yeah, they
So,
may have. One thing I've learned from
they-
Starling is they typically, if there's a little flaw in a game and they release an expansion, it typically is adjusting or fixing some flaw that they had.
I mean, it sounds cool. I'm interested, but I love that kind of fantasy
Yeah.
genre with the kind of magic. It sounds cool.
It was a great,
It's very fun,
great
yeah.
player interaction combat game
Yep.
where you never really were. There are games, and I mentioned the Game of Thrones, the board game from Fantasy Flight. I think at the when we were done playing it, where I played the Baratheons once, and I was done. I was eliminated off the table like basically at the end of turn 2. Like I was done. I went and sat and watched TV for the
Yeah.
next 3 hours while everybody else played out the rest of the game, because you were just eliminated, and that just can't happen really. In
no
this
way
game.
to come back. Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, and like you said, with this, there's a point in the game where I think I only controlled 3 spaces, 3 hexes anywhere on the board, but I was able to really come back from that. Not a couple turns of getting some more followers and doing a couple things. So the benefit of the simple combat is it lets you recover from getting attacked really badly, but then again, it is easy to just steamroll the first player on the last round. So,
yeah. No, but if you like this kind of game, you definitely should check out Archmage from
Starling Games.
Yeah. that one. All right. I'm doing really well here. So let's go ahead and dive into our hobby corner. I'll go ahead and start. I just recently picked up a Creality Ender 3 3D printer. I think they might even still be on sale for like a ridiculously low price for an entry-level 3D printer. I think it was $155 US to buy it, which is, like I said, it's really cheap, and it's a printer that I had my eye on for quite a while as one of the options of 3D printers I was going to purchase to get into it. When I saw that price drop, I was like, done, I'm buying it. So it's been kind of turned into a big learning curve of trying to get the hang of it, trying to print some things, but I think I've started to get a better feel for it. I'm still using the slicer software that came with it. The slicer software is basically what lets you take the image files, the graphical files, and then put it into a file that the printer can actually print, use to print. And then you load them on for the Ender 3. You load it on a little SD card and you plug it in and go through the menu and tell it to print things. The biggest challenge with it is because it's a very manual printer. There's no automation to like bed leveling. Is like that was the first big trick, was trying to figure out how to level the bed and trying to figure out how to get the plastic off the printer bed. But now that I've gotten past that, I'm starting to print replacement tiles, 3D tiles for Terraforming Mars. I've got most of those done. I just need them painted up. I've printed a bunch of chests and 3D tiles for our Dungeons and Dragons game that's going to be coming up, because I want to be able to, on top of the miniatures, add a little more three-dimensional effects for certain special scenarios. And then I've been printing up some other stuff. Like right now, we talked about in our review game last time about the Lost Ruins of Arnak and how we were disappointed with the coins and compasses. Well, guess who found on Thingiverse, which is a great website for free files that you can then print, I found replacement tokens for the coins and the compasses. So I'm printing those now. When they get done, I will have a whole pile of really cool painted up tokens. It'll probably look cooler than the included tokens because I'll have painted them up. But it'll be, they'll just add to the game, and hopefully I'll get those done before Lost Ruins hits the table again. So that'll be awesome. So definitely, like, if you're on the edge of getting a 3D printer, I really recommend just going and getting yourself in one of these cheap Ender 3s and getting started, because I'm finding it really worth it. It's basically hasn't stopped for anything longer than a couple hours since I got it, and I've printed a lot I'm on my third spool of plastic now, so you can get a lot of prints for, not a lot of plastic.
Well, and I just think of, like, I mean, it's definitely something I've thought about, but I just think of all the things that we do, different hobbies. Like, I mean, my head immediately goes to, gee, I'd really love to see some 3D print stuff for Settlers of Catan, which I know they've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even like with all the different things we've done, Warhammer, Star Wars, Batman, I mean, there's so many things that you could do that would just be really cool additions to see on the table and stuff like that would be, yeah, it's hours of time, but I mean, what do I care? The printer can run all night for all I care.
Oh, BMG, there's tons of suspect markers for various different factions with cool like stuff that people have done that are right up on Thingiverse, so you don't even have to like get too creative or inventive. There are tons of terrain options I'm looking at for doing. Not that I need a whole lot more terrain, but there are more terrain options. And certainly if I run larger BMG tournaments and that kind of thing, having more modern terrain on hand is going to be really nice. And just so many options. I saw today too, I was on Facebook looking at one of the groups, and somebody's printing a drill press for their Dremel.
That's a really good idea.
Huh.
So yeah, I mean, if you needed a plastic bit, we got a Roomba for vacuum cleaning. You want replacement bits, wheels, want to raise it up so it keeps getting stuck underneath your chair. Well, you can print some bits and put it on the top of your Roomba, and then it'll catch and bang on the chair and not instead of getting stuck. Something we're probably going to do because that exact thing happens with a Roomba all the time. So just, I mean, if you needed some plastic, but now we're printing with whatever the biodegradable PLA plastic. So it's like you don't really want to get it wet too much or anything like that because it will break down. It's the easiest plastic to work with. It's also the one that's not going to be like, hey, I'm filling my house full of fumes and nasty stuff. So where we have the 3D printer, we really just don't have ventilation to be able to get into printing anything, printing with any plastics that would allow for more that kind of use. Like there were some pots, I think Ashley saw, our daughter, for putting plants and stuff in, that she was like, ooh, I want to print. I would love it if you guys could print this stuff. And we're just like, can't print it. I can't print with a plastic that'll work for a planting pot and those kind of things. Or coasters. There were tons of cool coasters. Nope, can't print those.
And that's just the type of plastic. It doesn't have to do with the printer.
No, it's just the type of plastic. PLA is a lot more friendly for like human error, though, like bed leveling and getting your prints to stick to your bed and those kind of things are far less difficult with PLA as well. It's the most forgiving. So, but there's some limitations to it.
Ben is now lost for the next 3 to 4 months in 3D printing heaven.
Pretty
I mean,
much.
If I would love to get a resin printer, because then I could really get into, like, you can do some miniatures with the Ender 3, and I will get to the point where I'm printing some miniatures with the Ender 3, but it's going to be fairly well textured miniatures that you don't necessarily notice the little lines that end up happening when you 3D print the layer lines models with that. But if you get into the resin printing, that's virtually gone.
Yeah. Well, I will say I've seen at least the tiles that you've done for Terraforming Mars, and they look fantastic because it's just a really nice little, like you said, to me, it's just a nice little add-on, something you can do for yourself and add something to the tabletop game. So,
yeah, it definitely totally worth it. So I know you've been working on something. What do you got up your sleeve?
Yeah, I've done some hobby. Carrying on where I was in the last episode, I'm still working on my D&D mini. I did get a few days of good progress in there. I've been a little distracted with house projects and stuff in the summer here. I don't remember exactly where I was at last time, but I'm playing a sorcerer, so I have a sorcerer mini from Reaper Games, and our campaign's going to be in the Forgotten Realms, Icewind Dale, so I winterized them a little bit. Like, it wasn't too bad already, but I just kind of took the opportunity to customize it a bit more. So I did some green stuff work on it, and now I've gotten to start painting it. I have a few colors on it. I'm kind of running a little low on time, so I have to kind of ramp it up in the priority level of things here, as I think it's only a couple weeks out, and we'll have our first day of our campaign started already. So,
yeah. TPK first session. That's what we're shooting for, right, guys?
Yep.
TPK, total party kill, by the way.
I've got to keep my streak going. You know, in any campaign, I'm the guy who goes through more characters than anybody.
Well,
but they always die totally in character and in some way that makes complete sense.
I'm hoping very much that we do not have a character death in the first session.
Oh boy, yeah.
I have nothing but faith in Brian to put me in that situation.
I went through a lot of work trying to get you guys to the point that we could even have a character for a first session. So let's try to keep them surviving for a little while.
Fair enough.
So, Suzanne, I know you've got a hobby project to tell us about. What have you been working on?
Well, I am restarting a project that I stopped a couple months ago. So I have a giant skyscraper that I'm working on putting some lights in. It's going to be for the Batman Miniatures game, which is one of the 2 mini games that I enjoy playing. So I'm just been working around with what the easiest way to add some lights in with my limited skills in this area. This is the first time I'm trying to add some lighting to some terrain. So we're just working on putting some fairy lights strung in it with some straws to block out the light, and getting to the point then where my lovely husband will paint it up for me, so that, because painting is not my strong suit, which is why I have no minis that I paint. But once that is done, we should have a cool centerpiece for some of our Batman tables.
Yeah, so this thing's the skyscraper from TT Combat, actually, is the manufacturer of the MDF kit. And the thing sits like 3.5 feet off the table, I think.
Pretty close to it. It's in 3 large sections.
Is this the one that I've seen you working on for a while, sometimes during our hobby nights?
Yeah.
Yes. When hobby nights stopped, the work on it kind of stopped because my hobby space is in Ben's office, which is gets taken over by things during the day from time to time.
I can't fathom that from Ben. That's such a stretch.
So
I think I need to clean the next effort on this project is me cleaning off the workspace that's now been cluttered with various projects that no longer fit on my desk.
Yes, I have gone up a couple times to make space to work, and then that's about all the time I have, and then come back again and need to make space to work.
Sounds like a project where we actually build a non-invadable space for Suzanne to do her hobbies. Or we just need to figure out which room of the house Suzanne's going to take over. But
yeah.
Well, that's
that got taken over by my work computer.
Yeah. So, yay, working from home. But yeah, that's going to be really awesome when it gets finished. I'm looking forward to getting that, and hopefully having our first piece of terrain that has lights that light up will not be our last.
No, it's been a lot of fun figuring this out. So there are many more to come.
Hopefully, some point, Suzanne will tell us and give us some tips on how you can light up your own terrain on our website at wiscodice.com.
The geek in me is like, are you going Arduino or are you going to go like full bore? Oh my God, I lost it. I was going to say like a Raspberry Pi, that sucker, or
No, I don't think we're getting that complicated yet.
Something simpler that is mobile, so you can take it places with you, and the power source is self-contained.
Oh, we can do that with a Raspberry Pi.
A little, yeah.
Just so we're clear, so there's no mistaking. No, that's not something I enjoy. I just, I know tons of people that my brother would be giving me all sorts of grief about why we weren't linking all the lights on the table to a Raspberry Pi and programming it. But
well, that's actually gotten relatively easy not to get off.
it has,
Yeah.
With programmable LEDs and a lot of software that's come out now, you can
Yeah.
pretty easily do that and do it on the relative cheap. So yeah, get a bunch of IT geeky people at the table, and we're going to be doing some crazy stuff with these things. All right. So Matt or Justin, do you guys have anything you wanted to tell us about?
For me, it's literally been the honey-do list, and my daughter has been graduating from college, or high school, sorry, not college. My daughter's been graduating from high school, so that's been sucking up all my free time as we were prepping for numerous people to come to the house. So a lot of projects got shelved for the last month. But I'm kind of in the same boat as Stark here, that I need to really get my butt in gear and get some paint on some models before the first play session. So I probably have some more update on my minis that I've been working on here for the next month. So
We're going to have, I've got all of these painted D&D models, and you guys are all going to show up at prime figures. It'll be great.
yes, that's
If
my
that-
goal.
I'm better than
Like,
that already.
If I weren't feeling guilty and disappointed, it wouldn't be the right day of the week.
Be like, we all had... I painted, I don't know, I think I'm at 40 or 50 figures now for this thing.
Good
you guys
Lord.
have one.
Yeah. I did get some new paints, some new Reaper paints, just to get colors, certain colors I wanted for my miniature for D&D. I'm playing a half-orc paladin, so I have a Reaper minifig, Reaper miniature for that. Regretfully, he has not been started, but I've been sort of watching some more videos on techniques and just, skills and stuff so that I can do a good job on the thing. I guess I could always paint a second one if I mess this one up too bad. Yeah.
Or
I think
or you
one-
can kill him off and then.
Why worry about getting him
Ben's gonna kill him off anyways. Maybe I shouldn't do a good job painting him. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I really took away, Justin, and I started painting a long time ago, and every once in a while I still have a couple minis around from that first army I worked on.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, it's an evolution. It's something that I don't feel like you're ever born being just phenomenal at it. And some of the best people I know, I mean, they've thrown out probably more minis than I care to admit that I've ever painted. And you do. It's just something you learn over time. And that's one of the things I think that's really cool is I think back to when Ben and Stark and I started, and there weren't detailed, this is how you do this cool effect on YouTube. I mean, that just wasn't a thing. I mean, you were
was
stuck
barely
with
a
the
thing.
people you knew. And
It might not have been a YouTube then.
yeah, YouTube was around, I think. Maybe not.
Don't figure
no,
out the
probably
dates
not.
on this stuff.
But I mean,
Don't
the
do the
cool
math.
thing about it, I think now is you're God, I really struggle with blacks. There's 50 different techniques on YouTube for how to paint black, and you can look it all up and practice it on some stuff, and then find the one that works for you. Because I mean, I don't know. I always thought it was mind blowing because we'd meet all these really good painters in Wisconsin, and over the years, and some of them would do techniques that I just couldn't wrap my head around. But then another one would show me something. I'm like, it's that simple. And suddenly my painting would launch to a whole new level. And that was just kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. And the products weren't there either.
No.
You had, Reaper paints were still there, but it was hard to get your hands on them because online ordering wasn't really a thing. And so you were kind of stuck with, there was no Vallejo, there was no Game Color. There was no any of these other brands of paints. You had Citadel paints and pretty much Citadel paints. And then that was what you had. So you went to the game store, you bought Games Workshop Citadel paints, and half the time the stuff dried out or was half dried out by the time you even opened it the first time, or was dried out when you went to go use it. And then you had inks. You didn't have washes, you had inks. And there was no idea of how to do a wash. And there really wasn't anything there wasn't really good instructions on how you use inks. And so if you weren't familiar with watercolors and those kind of products, it was a challenge to use.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
anyways, we should probably take a break here. We've been rambling for I think an hour now.
Really?
And when we
like
get
that.
back, we're going to check out the interview I did with people who made Distilled, the board game, and it's going to be coming on Kickstarter. It'll be on Kickstarter when this episode releases, so make sure you get your wallets out and back that game because it's going to be awesome. And then we will wrap that up with our final topic of the day. All right, and we are back. Just myself here right now, but I've also been joined by Dave, who's going to introduce himself and let you know all about a new game that's coming to Kickstarter soon. Dave, why don't you go ahead and give our listeners a quick introduction, tell them who you are.
Great. Thanks, Conzi. Thanks for having me here. My name is Dave Beck. I'm hailing from further north and west in the state. So I'm in Menominee, Wisconsin. And I'm actually a game design professor at the University of Wisconsin Stout. But why I'm here today and really excited to join you is to talk about Distilled. Distilled is a game I've been working on over the last couple of years. And I actually came up with the idea when I was in Scotland. And it's all about the idea of distilling different types of alcoholic spirits. So like whiskey and vodka and gin. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I'm so excited to finally talk about it and share it with others too.
Been following you on social media, and I can tell you that it's been getting me excited, and it's one of the reasons we're doing this because the game looks like it's great. There's
Cool.
another great game that I like that is in the spirits world, but it's more on the beer side with Brew Crafters. Love that game.
Mhm.
And so when I saw this, I'm like, oh, this is a perfect complement to
Mhm.
one of my other passions, which is probably drinking a little too much to go along with my gaming. So it's going to be the perfect combination. So what's the game experience like? What can people really expect to get out of Distilled?
Yeah, so good question. Really what it comes down to is, and this is what I hear from a lot of people as far as feedback, is it's extremely thematic. And so my hope is that when people play this, they're going to get a peek into the world of distilling and that process behind it, not only the kind of recipe side and how to create it and craft it, but also the business side. So there's going to be a little bit of resource management. There's going to be a little bit of push your luck, or I like to say mitigate your luck. There's a market, so you're going to be purchasing things and acquiring goods. There's an economy having to deal with as well, as far as money and fluctuation of what's available to sell. So yeah, overall, a Euro medium weight style game with mainly focusing on things like recipe fulfillment, resource management, and a little bit of push your luck.
That sounds pretty awesome. All good quality game mechanics that we love to see in games we're playing. So that sounds exciting. So what really inspired you to create this game? What's the driving force here?
Yeah. So as I had mentioned earlier, I was in Scotland, and this is actually connected to my job. So as a professor, I'm lucky enough every so often to get what's called the sabbatical. I apply for it and I'm awarded that. And it's an opportunity for me to spend a little bit of time doing some research. So I was in I applied to say I'm going to go to Scotland for my sabbatical. Will you please give it to me? The university did, which is wonderful. I had to get my way to Scotland, obviously, on my own. But once I was there, I had plans to do something with video games and technically augmented reality and virtual reality, because that's really my area, is 3D modeling, animation, games, game design. And I was working on some interesting recreations of historical artifacts over there using augmented reality and virtual reality. But then I had been touring so many whiskey distilleries and actually having enough drams of whiskey as well that and playing games, board games. I brought an entire very large suitcase full of games over there too, because I knew it was going to be a long semester. And one night I couldn't sleep, and this game just dawned on me. This idea of certain mechanics that I could incorporate into the game that are very connected to the actual process behind distilling alcohol, which is kind of a unique thing. And so I got up, I started writing notes. I spent most of the night, paper after paper, scribble after scribble. And probably by around 6 or 7 in the morning, I had a game that was called Distilled. I had decided then it would be called Distilled. And really, at that point, it was focused more on deck building, but still this idea of a card-based game. At first, it was about whiskey, and specifically Scotch whiskey and other whiskeys around the world. But then I started to discover all the different types of spirits from all around the world that people had never heard of, like myself too. So that's what's really driven me to realize a game like this doesn't exist yet. Not only because there's not one about distilling, like you said, there's some great ones about beer, there's some great ones about wine, but there's none about distilling alcohol that is a medium weight strategy game. And it was my opportunity to be able to teach people about other spirits around the world and cultures too. So that's what I've done, and can't believe I'm almost to the point now where hopefully this is going to become a reality.
Sounds very cool, and there's a lot there that sounds like it makes you really excited about this game. But what's really, is there any one bit of this that makes you more excited about this game than say other games that you've played or worked on?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, Conzi. I think it's this culmination of my background as an artist and also having a degree in history, an undergraduate degree in history, and my passion for games, board games, and my passion for whiskey, just something I've always loved. All of those things are coming together here. And that maybe this is the best part of all, is I've got an amazing team I'm working with too. It's a small team, but it started with just myself and my good friend, who's also a colleague at the university, Eric Evanson. He's an artist and illustrator, and he's really bringing this game to life and in a really visually rich way that I just am so excited about. So I think that's really what it comes down to, is this cool intersection of authenticity mixed with theme, mixed with mechanics, mixed with fun. And I hope that's the kind of the same type of experience other people will have, because that's really what's been getting me the most excited about this.
Yeah, and you've talked a lot about the art of this game. And from what we've been able to see, it great and really seems to capture, at least in my mind, what the feel for this game should be. How did you guys approach the artistic design to this game?
Oh man, you ask all the good questions. This is great, and I wish Eric were here. Eric couldn't be here tonight, but I wish he were here to be able to speak to this. So I'm going to try and do him justice here. But Eric has a certain style, like most artists do, that they are most comfortable with and maybe known for. So Eric's got a background. Well, here, before I get to that, but of course, artists can also emulate other styles if they have to. And that was a conversation Eric and I had early on. Do we want this to be hyper realistic in all manners? So think like Brass Birmingham or Brass Lancashire. Because I told him, like, I want this to be dark and gold and wood and whiskey like, and I basically said like Brass Birmingham. And Eric helped me understand that that's fine, but depending on the audience that you want to speak to, you need to think about other things too, like characters and character design. And is this a serious not dark, but a serious heavy game like Brass maybe would be considered? Or is this something you want friends around the table to be just enjoying, having drinks, sharing what they made, that type of thing. And I realized that's what I want, is something that's a medium level game, maybe almost medium to light, like if you were right on the edge of the two. So with that, we realized Eric's artwork is great. He can illustrate anything. He's fantastic. But when he does people, he has a certain style, and we wanted to strive for that in this so that it would give this feeling of kind of like a fictional world, a fun approach to it, not necessarily kind of like dark and dreary, gritty, it's all the pores on the person's face are revealed. So that's kind of where we landed on that, and how we came to it is realizing we should take advantage of Eric's skills in illustration, but then also in how he creates the characters and how he gets to design them. So Every character in the game is designed by Eric. You play as you inherit the distillery from someone, and at the very beginning of the game, you get 2 cards from a group of about 10 or 12, and they're different characters that you've inherited this distillery from, and you get to choose who you basically inherit it from. But Eric's not only done these cool illustrations of these people as if they were a painted portrait, but then if you flip the card over, he's written an entire backstory on them as well. He has a background in graphic design or graphic novels and comics, so he's really kind of brought some of that into the fold too, to make it again fun, funny, interesting, unique, and actually fairly historically accurate, even if it is historical fiction.
Well, I'm going to say that sounds pretty awesome, and it's great to tie that personality right into the art as well. So I'm really excited to see what that's going to feel like and look like on the table.
Yeah.
What makes Distilled really unique and stand out from other games that deal with brewing or crafting various alcoholic beverages, vinos, those kind of games? What really makes this one jump out? Why do people want to play this over those others?
Oh, totally. Yeah, good question. I'd say three things. The first is the first game that exists about spirits. So, like I mentioned before, and you mentioned too, I love Brew Crafters. Like, it's a fun game. It's a fun worker placement game. You've got some recipe fulfillment too. You're running your own brewery. And then you've got something like Viticulture. Again, a phenomenal game, in my opinion. I love Viticulture. Another fun worker placement game. What I've found is, that there's no spirit-based ones dealing with hard alcohol. It's a completely different process. But also, most of those games are worker placement, probably because you're trying to emulate the industry. And so you're trying to obviously assign your workers to different tasks on the board, on the table, to get the job done. And I totally get that. And I did think for a hot second about maybe having Distilled be a worker placement game, but I realized it had to be different. So it's almost entirely card based. Yes, you've got some boards, you've got a player board in front of you, you got some boards in the middle of the table, but they really serve the purpose to just hold cards. It's when it comes down to it, the root of it is a card game. And so that's the final thing to say that would be distinctive, is that the central mechanic of Distilled tries to emulate how you would really distill alcohol in real life. So a quick education on that. If I wanted to make a whiskey, I need 3 ingredients. I need water, I need yeast, and I need some sort of grain. If I'm in Scotland, I need barley. If I'm in America, I might want to use bourbon or corn for bourbon. If I'm in Canada, I might want to use rye, and so on and so forth. I need grain. So in Distilled, you have to have at least one of each of those ingredients. And you're dumping them into this big vat on the left-hand side of your player board, represented kind of looking like a big wooden tub. And you add, and those are there, and then you are actually going to add alcohol, because what you're doing is the presence of yeast is what creates alcohol, because it eats the sugars in your batch, in this case, grain. So in Distilled, you count the number of grain cards you have, in this case, for whiskey, in your stack, and you add that many alcohol cards. So you're essentially kind of growing your deck a little bit more. You mix all those together. It's fermented now. There's alcohol in this batch as well. And it's time to distill it. When you distill alcohol, and again, this is in real life, the first part of the liquid that comes off of the still, off of what's boiling it, and the last part at the end of the run are actually toxic. They have chemicals in them that would blind you or even kill you. They're highly poisonous. Distillers know this, so of course they make what's called a cut. And they cut at the beginning and the end, called the head and the tail. And they leave the heart, which is the center. And that's what you drink. Well, that head and tail is still reused. They actually set it aside and they reuse it again in the next batch. And so what I realized is I could have a really interesting mechanic where you're adding all your cards, you're mixing them up, you're getting some alcohol. You then are required to take, after you've shuffled them, you take the top card and the bottom card and you pull them off your stack and you put them back into your pantry to be used at a future round. The problem there is that if you've pulled certain ingredients that make whiskey, and in this case grains, you have gone from making a whiskey to potentially a moonshine in this game. So that's kind of the central hook and the central core mechanic of the game, is there's some push your luck. But the deal is, if you add more ingredients or you have different people working in your distillery that you've hired or equipment, you can mitigate that luck or actually remove it entirely. So it's this balance of trying to encourage the player to think about whether they thread the needle with just a bare minimum, or they are sure they're going to win by, having enough materials and equipment as well. So that's kind of that was a long answer, sorry, but that's kind of the main central hook to the game and why I think it makes it unique.
Hey, that was a perfect answer, actually. I think as I was listening to you describe the game and the mechanics, the more and more I'm ready to get my wallet out and back this Kickstarter. So I'm very excited to be a backer soon.
Good.
We're recording this a little bit before it's actually released to the general public, but the plan here is to release this episode as your Kickstarter releases, which lends me to my next question, which is, as we're listening to this and people are getting as excited, hopefully, as I am about this game, when they go to your Kickstarter page, what are they going to be able to see? Are there big exclusives, or are there some forms of early bird specials? What do you have built in that you can tell us about this Kickstarter when it comes?
Sure. Yeah, I can tell you a little bit. I can't tell you too much because it's still somewhat top secret, but you'll be the first people I'm telling some of this stuff to. So I decided that I've backed, I don't know, probably 60 Kickstarters. I'm a big fan of Kickstarter in the space. And I appreciate the Kickstarter exclusive, like other people do. But after doing lots of reading and lots of thinking and listening and research, I realized that I don't think I necessarily want to do something exclusive to just Kickstarter. I want this to be something that people that might not have heard about it, that find out about later, that become really passionate, can find a way to obtain some of this too. So I'm not going to do any Kickstarter exclusives. With that said, we are going to be doing a couple things that are going to be hard to get otherwise, and also in certain cases free or heavily discounted for the backers. One of those that I'm really excited about is that if we are able to fund within the first 24 hours, then we are going to be giving every single backer a 14-card mini expansion pack for free. And in that mini expansion pack, it's going to have multiple different new distiller identities from around the world. So we've got someone from Northern Africa. We've got someone from Germany. We've got someone from, Russia, someone from over in the Americas as well. So again, we've got some new exciting elements that would only be there for free for the backers if we do it in the first 24 hours. So we're excited about that. In addition to the main game, we're not going to be doing a deluxe version necessarily, but we are going to be doing things that would be the opportunity to kind of deluxify it. So we're going to be offering the opportunity for metal coins. We're going to have an extra additional small expansion that people can get as well. We're looking at including some coasters for people to have in their game with their game, so that they can put their drink on it. So those are some of the things that we're looking at to be things that are going to be a little harder to obtain, honestly, after the Kickstarter, just because I don't know yet how retail this game is going to be. With this being an independent release from an independent indie game developer and publishing studio, we don't know yet how prolific Distilled will be in the world. So this is really might be the only chance. Hopefully not. Hopefully it does really well. But for some of these things, I think that would be the time for them to jump on and get those both at a discount, but also because they are going to be a little harder to obtain later.
Well, I'll have to make sure my friends here at Noble Knight Games and Misty Mountain Games here in Madison know about this Kickstarter, and know about this game, so that when it comes time to think about getting it on their shelves, that they're really seriously considering it and reach out and to try to make sure that they stock it at the very least.
Totally. And I forgot to mention, I will have a retail pledge. So that's always great for retailers, where they're going to be able to get it at a discounted price when they buy in bulk. So that'll be an opportunity as well.
Perfect. So I think that gets me through all of the questions that I plan to ask tonight. Is there anything else that you want to say about this game that I haven't asked about up to this point?
I don't think so. I mean, we're very fortunate to be able to have been considered as finalists for multiple awards for this game already. We were finalists in the Ion competition, and we're a finalist currently in the Cardboard Edison Award. So we're really excited about that. I'm just absolutely thrilled to have the team I'm working with. A few of them are from Stout, so we've got two other individuals Cody Reimer and Seth Barrier that are also helping, that are stout professors. So it's kind of like this super professor team that's working on the game. But then I've also got some people overseas. So I'm working with really closely, and a good friend of mine now named Richard Woods, who's the developer, who's over in the UK. So he's working on the development of the game, play testing, balancing. And then David Digby actually designed the solo mode for Distilled, and it's getting being received very well also. And he's done some really great designs for larger games like Dice Theme Park, Tinner's Trail, Chocolate Factory. So I've been excited to have them on board too. So it's shaping up to be a pretty great team, not only just Wisconsin, but also from around the world, which is pretty cool. So I guess those are just a couple other things to mention as well.
Well, that sounds perfect. So you'll be able to find the link to this Kickstarter in our show notes, so that if you need to, or you feel it, I shouldn't say if you need to, you will need to, after you listen to this, be so excited you will want to go back this game.
That's right.
catch the link in our show notes, hop right over to Kickstarter, or look for it on our Kickstart Monday series of blog posts as well. We will definitely be very, very excited about this game. We want you to back it. It looks amazing. I love the art. I love how this game is coming together, and it's backing a game that this is what Kickstarter's really about, which is helping make someone's dream become a reality and not be a pre-order system.
Totally. That's exactly right. Yep.
So get out there, back Distilled, do it today, do it for Wisco Dice, and do it for these guys, because I'm telling you, this game is going to be great. I really, really have that feeling.
Thanks, Cozy. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dave. I really appreciate hearing all about Distilled. We wish you the best of luck with this Kickstarter and hope nothing but the best. To really, like I said, I think this game is going to really excite a lot of people that didn't otherwise realize, that they were missing a game like this in their collections.
Cool. Thanks, Cozy, so much. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right, when we come back, we'll go ahead and wrap up the show.
And we're back. And we're going to go ahead and dive into some techniques and tricks into staying cool at the gaming table. Because we've all played that game that we just weren't into it, or something went sideways, or we just stunk it up terribly and we're losing awful. And when those things happen, when you're at the gaming table and you're playing a game that's like that, it can be really frustrating. It can really be easy to turn into the person who's watching their phone, because I never do that while I'm playing a game, or completely distracted, or constantly complaining, or telling people how miserable this game is, or how broken this game is, or how something should just never have been designed that way. And we've all experienced that from playing, and some of us have probably even done some of those things. So we're going to try to talk about things that you can do that help kind of get you past that. So Justin, I think you were going to lead this off for us.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess my first thing with this is you got to keep in mind why you're at the table in the first place. And I think for most people, and for me, I need, when I get frustrated, I need to remind myself that I'm here to play with other people and have fun. While it is fun to win games, that's not really the reason that I'm sitting down and playing a game. I'm here to play with other people and have a good time. So I think it's important to keep in your head when you're starting to go to that frustrated place where you're having problems or the game's not for you. There's other people there too, and they might be having an awesome time, right? They could be doing really, really well. And I guess maybe it's a long way of saying the game's not all about you. There's, however many other people playing, and part of the, I guess, social contract that you've kind of bought into when you sit down and play with other people is that you have some responsibility for their experience as well. So, you gotta realize that they're there to have fun too, and you don't want to be that person to just make it all about yourself. and bring the game down because you're having a bad time. Somebody else may be having the best time, and it could have just been bad luck or something. I'm doing bad. I didn't make the right moves. I didn't understand the game. That happens. Be conscious of other people. They're having fun too, or they want to have fun. So keep that I think that should be the first goal when you're playing a game with other people.
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video the other day about how to be a better dungeon master. We've all talked about, we keep talking about this D&D game, this Dungeons and Dragons game that we have coming up, where I'm taking the seat behind the screen and being the dungeon master. And one of the first things they talked about was the first thing you need to do is really believe that you're there to have fun, that you are going to have fun. Once you're at that point at the table, like once you're to that point, like, hey, I'm having fun. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm having fun. It doesn't matter if my dragon rolls a bunch of ones and the players steamroll it. I'm having fun. I'm playing a game. And once you get to that point, then you can enter this second level of immersion and getting into the game and helping ensure that the other people at the table are also having fun. And when you can hit that perfect medley of having fun yourself and helping the other players have fun at the table, that's like a special moment, at least in my mind. And there are definitely games, maybe the game itself wasn't that great, but that moment where everybody's at the table is having fun and everybody else is kind of helping everybody else have fun at the same time, makes the game really, really a ton of fun to play. So, Brian, I think you were going to dive in and tell us some things.
Yeah, my kind of main idea when I was thinking about this is kind of in line with that, and it kind of almost comes before you start even playing the game, is just kind of like a mental awareness. Kind of the same idea, like you're there to play to have fun. Like, I know my biggest problem when I get like frustrated in a game is just like getting too competitive, and so if I'm losing, I get like really frustrated kind of thing or something like that, and it can probably come off like even like negative towards my opponent or stuff, and it's usually I'm just like really mad at myself, like why am I such an idiot and can't play better kind of thing like that. And all of it's just like a mental thing. Like, I know I've had games I can lose terribly exactly the same way, but like my expression or how I'm feeling about it can be like completely different. Like, I can roll a handful of ones or something and laugh at it one game, but then other times I'll curse a bunch or something like that, which never happens when I'm at the game table.
Never.
And I think it's all just based on kind of my mindset going into the game. Like, I really just want to have fun and stuff, but sometimes I get really caught up in my competitiveness and when it's not going my way or whatever. And it really varies by the game too. Like, if I'm in my first play of a board game or something like that, I usually have a lot easier time letting go. It's like, I'm just going to try and figure out. I know I get hung up, and Ben's shaking his head at me for those.
There's.
I know I get hung up in figuring out like the strategy of it kind of thing. I'm a very like slow player and want to like plan everything out, so it's hard to get over that sometimes. But I guess how I feel, I can usually like let it go if I'm not like winning kind of thing, but I know I'm still slow and like trying to win kind of thing. But like in a first play, it's like I'm going to learn and figure this out. Like, other people probably have like, set strategies that are going to whoop my like whatever I'm thinking of in a first play.
My random whatever
he
I
says
picked
this
out.
and then turns around and wins, and the whole time grumbling. But he doesn't quite understand the mechanic of this or that.
Not always.
I give him a lot of credit. He deconstructs how to win games much faster than I do, because I'll still be frustrated.
Well, that's why I'm so slow, as I'm like sitting there constantly churning like how everything fits together, and I'm trying to plan out like my next 5 moves or something like that, and then somebody else will change the game, and then it's like, okay, now I got to replan my next 5 moves kind of thing on their turn.
You mean there are other people at the table?
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah. So, like, I know I have those games, and then, like, I feel like I have a harder time with not getting frustrated in, like, our miniature tabletop wargaming things. Like, a lot of those are just, like, directly competitive, and it's really easy to kind of get down and out in those.
To your point, though, and I go to something Ben and I ran into quite a bit at tournaments back in our Warhammer days, which is, I will say in tournaments, there are some players that are just a joy to play against. I've had people wipe the floor with me, and I just had a really good time the entire game while they literally just rolled my army off the table. So I think there's a bit of that social contract that we were talking about, is regardless of whether I think it's a board game or you're winning or you're losing, is I think there's that kind of social contract. Because I will say there were armies that I played in the Warhammer days, Slayers, where I really loved the army. And I loved playing the army thematically. But there came a point where I just stopped playing the army as much as I loved it, because it just wasn't fun for anybody else at the table. And I never quite mastered. I think, Ben, you had a few players like this, where you'd run into them in the tournament, and even though from the second they set their army down, you knew they were just going to blast everything you had off the table, that they were just really fun people to be at the table with. And that was something that I think I still aspire to, but I don't feel like I've made it there yet. Because I have the same streak that Brian does, where I'm not usually mad at the other person. I mean, there are a few times where I feel like I think I need to remember more of what Justin was talking about, which is we're here to have a fun game. And, oh, by the way, occasionally my goal is to win that thing, which means I'm going to screw you occasionally in the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, don't take it personal, right? But, there are times that I'm just much more frustrated at myself, because I feel like I've played this game a couple of times. I should know a strategy by now. We just play such a variety of games. It's hard for me to keep all the strategies straight. And so, most times if I'm getting frustrated and I feel like I'm taking it out on the table, it's more frustration with myself and less at the people I'm playing with. But it's hard. I feel like my strategy sometimes is you just got to take a breath and be like, remember the social contract. I'm here to have a good time. And I'm having a bit of frustration. I mean, I can't count the number of times I've sat down at the table and been really frustrated and came in first or second. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know how I got here. I was kind of an ass on the way here.
Oh, see, for me, when I get frustrated with the game, I just want the game to be over. So one of the techniques I use, like when we play on Mars and it's drawing out and there's no way that I'm going to win, is I just say, well, I'm going to change my strategy and I'm just going to push up all of the areas that trigger endgame. What is going to trigger endgame? And that's what I'm going to work towards. I don't care if I'm scoring points. I don't care if I'm screwing someone else over. This is what I'm doing. And that kind of mental shift that I'm now changing my own personal objective from getting the most points to how fast can I push up these other areas. Definitely helps with a lot of the miniatures games, especially with Star Wars Armada. If I'm just dying and losing ships left and right, well, since I pick a ship that I usually don't destroy and I just focus all my energy on, hey, how quickly can I destroy this ship? And how quickly can I destroy that ship? And just go very attacky and don't really worry about the rest of the strategy if I make my objectives. Just kind of turn it that way, and it's a new fun way for me to fight and play the game until it's over.
Oh, yeah, you pointed out something that I've done in miniatures games is when you have the table completely start out poorly, and I think you could apply this to board games as well, but you're in the game and just nothing is working, right? You're 2 or 3 rounds in. You're definitely going towards that massacre loss. You know all hope is gone of turning this thing into a victory. You find that point in the game where you do something that just focus in on, hey, can I destroy that ship, or can get that little moral victory, because that little moral victory still gives you something to work towards and keeps you kind of motivated and energetic and excited about what's going on in the game, rather than letting the frustration continue to seep in because it's not going right. Yeah, sure, I'm losing all my squadrons over here, and I just lost another Star Destroyer, but over here I'm knocking out, hey, I got that little Nebulon V over here. And I'm destroying a couple of squadrons over here. I was able to actually do that, and I was able to yeah, I just kind of gave up on this part of the game, but I had this one little bit that went my way, and I was able to build off of that. And then I'm walking away from the game. The next time you play, you're walking away going, okay, well, I still got some enjoyment out of that, and I was able to still be excited about that. Warhammer days, it was like, I remember playing against a gentleman at a tournament. I think it was our first round of the tournament. And he's playing Lizardmen, and I'm playing my Night Goblins, which were... I had a propensity to playing armies that weren't very good at the game at whatever time cycle the game was. And I think that was because I was more worried about ensuring that with new players that were getting introduced to the game, that I didn't play an army that was specifically curb stompy. Mm-hmm. So I never really, my collections of models and what I was playing at a given time weren't the greatest anyways. So I hear I'm dropping my 250 miniatures on the table against his, I don't know, probably 70 miniature army. There's that initial awe factor, but I'm losing the game, and it's like the last turn of the game, and I cast whatever the Bad Moon Rises spell or whatever, and dropped it through a unit of, this 5-inch round template went through like a unit of Saurus, and the game went from like a massacre loss in his favor, where I was getting massacred, to like a minor victory, because he, those Saurus infantry were like initiative 1, and you have to roll a d6, and if you roll anything greater than a 1, then the dudes die. So like, I just decimated this huge swath of Saurus, and all of a sudden, like, hey, I scored a bunch of victory points from that, and that pulled the changed the game. And to this day, I think Mike remembers that moment. And when we get together, we might mention that game, because it was that memorable moment, and it wasn't a game that, otherwise was going very badly, but because there was that, like, hey, one thing I was trying to get, and I was like, one thing I was still trying to shoot for, like, I'm like, if I just hang in here, guys, just hang in your little goblins, just hold one more round, and I might be able to get a magic phase that do this, and bam, it happened, and it was exciting, and we were both high-fiving at the table, and it could have went a completely different way. And I know I've had games that have went that way.
Oh, yeah.
Where it was just miserable. Our last game of BMG, Brian and I played, I think went that way, right? It was just...
Yeah, sorry about that.
It was just... I mean, my Joker crew was just kicking your teeth in, and there was so little you could do. And so it was really easy to get frustrated, right? And at that point, once you're frustrated, if you let that frustration build, it will continue to build. And so I've rambled for a while, but basically what I'm trying to say is you try to find something you can make out of it, even if you know you're going to lose, and then that gives you something to refocus on and re-energize on.
Yeah, I think breaking down to those kind of minor small victories, even though you might not get the overall victory or a goal just to end the game sooner, is something I don't do very well, that I should really focus more on in those games that are going downhill.
Well, and I just like that from the perspective too, that some of the games we play, let's be honest, are a little bit crunchier. So there's a lot of interesting, complex strategies around. I mean, that's always the hard part for me to remember, as I'm playing against people like that have probably played this, a dozen times, and they've seen some interesting strategies, and I'm probably on my third playthrough, if that, and I should not beat myself up and be like, you know what, today I'm going to learn how to do this, and tomorrow I'm going to learn how to do that, and by the time I maybe get to my fourth or fifth playthrough, maybe I'll be a little more competitive, and just kind of roll with the punches a little bit more, just because that's always my struggle, is, like I said, it's just that more competitive streak. And the funny thing is my goal is never to win. My goal is to give you a good run for your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just
it's like, I'm not like, for anybody who knows me from my Warhammer days, I mean, I played dwarves, so the idea of me curb stomping you was never going to be a thing until Slayers rolled around. But I always felt like, except for a few like special armies, I could give people a run for their money, and I'd be in the game the whole time. I mean, you always had a bad game. Your dice didn't show up, and you learned to laugh at those, but I mean, that's kind of the same thing with board games. Is I struggle with that, because I always want to feel like I at least showed up to the table, and I didn't just like, I'm just the guy sitting in seat number 4, and him, you can just ignore him because he's not going to do anything of consequence. Yeah. So,
I like this idea too, because what it does is it puts your focus back into the game, right? I think there's a trap you can fall into where you're getting frustrated and you just want to check out of the game. And I think that just makes you more frustrated, because if you stop putting effort into taking your turns, other people pick up on that. That starts bringing the game down, and it's only going to make you feel more frustrated because, you're not going to do any better, and you're then focused on, I don't want to, be playing. But if you at least kind of pick something to do in the game, like you're saying, objective, even if it's small, even if it's not going to win you the game, your focus is on the game then, and so you're still trying to help the experience for everybody, to keep your focus on the game and not try to check out completely and just moan and complain like, I made such bad choices. Like, if you can pick that small objective, at least then you're helping the game continue, and potentially you could re-energize yourself into the game by finding that new goal or task. So I think I may pick that technique up, because the trap I fall into is that I can tell that I'm not going to win. Sometimes you're just like, I really feel like I can win this. I know I can do good. And then you haven't made the right decisions or taken the right actions. You just start to feel like you want to check out. I think people pick up on that, and brings the game down if you just start making obviously sort of stupid moves, I guess. Not making stupid moves, but just taking your energy out of the game, right? Mm-hmm. So keeping it in the game, I think, is a better idea. Yeah, I like that.
But the other thing too is in miniatures games, you can always say, particularly miniatures games where it's like, hey, it's 1-on-1. You can always say, hey, you've got this. You won. Can we re-rack? Can we play? Let's start again. Let's play again. Let's re-rack the game and just start over, or play a different scenario or a different mission. Maybe the mission or the scenario you're playing wasn't really good for the army you brought to the table or the crew you brought to the table. In a board game or a role-playing game or many other games where it's not 1-on-1 and you can just say, hey, let's re-rack and start over. Yeah. Hey, we're playing Magic, and you know what? You've got this game.
I fold. I'm out.
Like another it'll be another 2 or 3 turns, but there's no way I'm going to win. Let's fold and shuffle it back up and start again, right? Those kind of games, it's really easy to do that. When you're playing a board game or an RPG, you're stuck at the table.
Yeah.
For the with
duration.
3 or 4 other players, or 5 or 6 other players for the duration, right? You don't want to be the person that says, even though you're not having a good time, maybe not having as good a time as you want because the game's not going your way, or or you don't like the game, or whatever that might be, you can definitely try to find something in the game or the people you're playing the game with. Another thing to do is just make small talk, make conversation. That's not about the game.
Yeah.
Don't like, the game is there to supplement this social hanging out with people thing. It's not like, hey, we're going to play a game, and it might be fun. Like, it was, we just played Ghostbusters for Board Game Brunch, and, it got to a point where, like, for me, the game kind of stopped being fun because none of us could manage to kill off the big Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and it just got to be this ridiculous series of rounds of play where none of us could roll a 4 or better. And well, this is kind of silly because you can see the inevitable conclusion of the game. It's going to come 3 or 4 rounds, ahead of time. Okay, we're going to win. Like, the game is, unless we absolutely can't roll a 4+. But then it was just like the silliness, and it got a little redundant and boring. And that was one of those points. It wasn't necessarily fun, but there were things, hey, we're gonna start talking, about what else is, other things that are going on, or like talking about what we're going to get ready to do for the podcast, talking about just these other topics in it. And, I hope that nobody really picked up too much that I wasn't having fun at the game table playing this game that we all agreed to play. Those kind of things, that kind of technique can help you avoid being gripey and complainy about something like, hey, how's your kid doing at school? Or, hey, how's work going for you? Or some other small talk technique. And
Sure.
We're not all the best at small talk, but that's a way to get back into the social element of the game and all of a sudden spark some conversation that gets you out of the negativity rut you're in and into, okay, now I can refocus maybe and bring some of that positivity of looking for something in the game that might be able to still get some enjoyment out of.
Yep.
I just focus on how do I let Suzanne win the game and not Ben.
That's another. I've heard people say that at the table and do that very thing at the table, and you know what? I play into it and I'll take the lumps I feel like I got big shoulders. I can take the lumps. It's fine. I'm the victim. It's okay.
Yeah, the idea kind of crossed my mind when you were talking about like the whatever miniature game versus board game, like where somebody might have their whole strategy figured out or whatever. Like, I feel like depending on your group or whatever, in a board game, like with more players, there's lots of different experience levels there and stuff too. And I feel like I have an easier time doing that. Like maybe this one person's crushing all of us, but like the other three of us are kind of more in the same boat and a little more competitive that way, where like a one-on-one game, it's kind of harder to deal with that, like where Ben's Joker crew is stomping my teeth in or whatever kind of thing. But if you have like, a 5-player game and one person's crushing you, but the other 4 of you are kind of competing, like that makes it a little easier too, just to have a varying experience level where you're not just completely outclassed, and it kind of is a little easier to feel like you're still, having a good game for some reason.
Yeah, it's like when we play Azul and we just kind of ignore Suzanne's score and the rest of us try to figure out what our score and who won. I mean, that's where I go. I mean, just because,
That was only a couple
Suzanne got like
times.
140 and the rest of us were like, but I got like 65 and Ben was at 70 and I felt pretty good about that.
She wasn't quite that lopsided. But yeah. We weren't quite that bad at it. But there's a lot of things you can do to help get yourself out of a negative rut at the game table and allow that to feed into everybody else's negative experiences. We would love to hear what you do to get yourselves out of that rut when you get into that negative space. So reach out to us, hit us up on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what your thoughts are on how you get yourself out of that negative rut while you're at the gaming table, and that you can keep your cool and stay cool and keep that social contract up and going and have everybody having fun at the same time. All right, that's it for today's episode. So we've talked about that great game Distilled in that interview. I hope you really enjoyed it. I really think this is a game you should take the time to back on Kickstarter. It's a phenomenal game. And then we've just wrapped up on how to stay cool at the gaming table. And then we had a amazing hobby corner this week. Caught up on some great hobby projects. And man, you guys have been playing way too many games lately, because we went on forever talking about all these games we've been playing. It was pretty awesome. So thank you so much for listening. Make sure you leave a review of this show wherever your favorite place is to find podcasts. Oh, and by the way, give us a like on our Facebook page. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Pinterest while you're at it. If you haven't looked recently, make sure you catch up on the blog at wiscodice.com. Hey, Brian, what's that site?
Oh, darn. I forget. Justin, what's our website again?
Wiscodice.com.
That's right. It's wiscodice.com. And until next time, everyone, peace out.